This morning, I'm going to start off by talking about a subject nobody really wants to talk about. But you'll understand why after a while. The first thing I want all of us to do is to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and think very hard about what you would like the world to remember you for when you're gone. One very important thing about yourself. Kind of nod when you got it so I know to go on. Okay, I think we're ready. It is said that if you really want to know the truth about a person, all you have to do is read two books about them. Their checkbook and their calendar. How they spend their money and how they spend their time pretty much sums up what they really value in life. One thing I know for sure, there was a time when all of us were a lot younger, young enough not to appreciate how often we would someday wish we could bottle time. Gone are the days when we daily wished we were older than we were. Many of us grew up during the age of advanced technology. All those dishwashers and lawnmowers, microwaves, and now computers, etc., 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 that were supposed to save us time. Now most of us need that time in a bottle to find out where we stored all that saved time. Life seems to just increase in speed, and no invention accelerated our lives more than that old personal computer. And now the iPhone and Facebook, etc., etc. Once upon a time, I would spend a half hour each day reading and answering what letters I might receive. Now, I spend time each day answering emails. If I could assign a time manager to each of us, we would probably find out that we spend very little quality time with our family, spouse, kids, or friends. Oh, we rarely leave anything critical undone, but it leaves very little time for prayer, loving, or study, or just plain thinking. We all struggle with time, and we all get caught up in the trap of believing that the busier we are, the more important we must be, and the more valuable we must be. And there is probably not one of us sitting here who at one time or another has not said to someone or agreed with someone, time is money. We've all heard that, right? Which tells others that what we call our job is purely the exchange of our time for someone's money. If we're to be honest, in life when given the choice, we almost always choose that which we value more. We're almost always willing to give more of our time for more money. And it isn't always in the form of overtime. Most of us trade time for getting ahead or climbing the ladder. We seem to equate those things with being successful. I wonder. In fact, I've always wondered, what would our lives be like if we really believed that a successful person was someone who, for instance, drove an older car but spent more time with family and friends, who lived in a smaller house but spent time helping the poor or tutoring children or feeding the hungry. Someone who wore out of style clothes but took the time to learn how to pray on a regular basis, or was available to friends who needed them for a few minutes. I can remember the time when I had to take the big step of putting those thoughts into action. I was at the end of my rope, my mental and emotional rope. After all the years I spent getting ahead in my bell, making good money, had my own house, and was considered a success by most people, I still wasn't content with my life. But then my life took a turn where even the antidepressants were depressing. About that time is when I met Karen, and that's when I knew there had to be more living than living out the belief that time is money. Oh, I know we all have to make a living, but we also are called by God to make a life. And much too often, we've sacrificed one for the other. Imagine for just a moment that we woke up in the morning, someone had deposited $86,400 into our checking account. We could spend it any way we wanted, but the catch was that we had to spend it all that day. It wasn't a rollover account. What would we do with it? Well, it does happen to us every day if we believe that phrase, time is money. Then every morning God deposits 86,400 seconds into our life account. We can waste them, we can spend them, or we can invest them, but we can't save them, not even in a bottle. It's sad, but we live in a day and age where we consider fishing, get that out in a minute, where we consider fishing wasting time, reading a book laziness, or just sitting around drinking coffee with friends unproductive. Each time we skip meals, lose sleep, miss church, or quit ministries because we don't have enough time, we have made a choice. And I have to say, because I have done it, we have chosen badly. I remember when the church in Tampa had a real huge yard sale, whole front and back full. When I saw all this stuff that we had accumulated for our church yard sale, I came to this conclusion. Number one, that we spend our time at jobs we hate. Number two, that we earn money to buy things we don't need. And number three, we try to impress people we usually don't even like. Duh, who are the Joneses anyway? Wayne Muller, in his wonderful book, which is simply entitled Sabbath, writes, people who have lots of money but little time we call rich. People who have lots of time to spend with those they love but not much money to spend on them we call poor. We're constantly striving and yet feel deprived and exhausted in the midst of unparalleled abundance, which we have in this country. Surrounded by people, we are still left longing for quality time to spend with family and friends, let alone time for solitude and renewal. We spend the energy of our lives on what is urgent, but in that process, we forget what is important, that which really makes us valuable human beings. In a nutshell, we spend our days accumulating things we will someday leave behind and neglecting that which will endure. Time cannot be saved. It is either spent on things that expire or invested in that which endures. And just for the record, that which endures is rarely a thing. Our whole gospel today is Christ calling people to something that endures. And all kinds of people making excuses as to why they don't have the time, perhaps next time, or wait until, whatever. You know, the trouble is, Christ will only ask us so many times, then may not pass our way again. I mean, let's get real. How many times will you ask a friend for help and be put off until a better time before you just quit asking? And Christ didn't pass their way again, because when he got to Jerusalem, there was a cross waiting for him. In the fourth act of Julius Caesar, Brutus says to Cassius, "There was a tide in the affairs of humans, which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted in all the voyages of our lives are bound in shallows and miseries. On such a sea are we now afloat. We must take the current while it serves, or lose our venture." What Shakespeare is saying through Brutus is that time, like the tide, is irretrievable. The song "Time in a Bottle" begged for the ability to save every day till eternity passes away, just to spend them with you. In the end, the singer has to acknowledge that there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you found them. But he says of those he loves, "I looked around enough to know that you're the one I want to go through time with." My friends, look around. We have a limited number of moments. It is not an endless supply. Who do you want to spend them with? Do we really want to go through life with our brand new cars, our employers' incentives, or our stockbrokers? Maybe we should think that perhaps we should be spending a bit more of that perishable commodity called time with those we love and with God that loves us. You know, the insurance companies say that most of us will live to be 70 or 80. So what are we? Halfway through our life? Maybe 2/3 of the way? Or maybe some of us are young and can't see that far. Let me tell you a secret I've learned. Don't ever blink. Because if you do, the years will disappear as fast as the food at a church potluck. I was thinking the other day that Karen and I shared 29 and a half years together. Now a handful of us might say that's not very long. But for many of us, being with one person for that long will seem like an eternity. For me, it seems like just yesterday that we met. It is only when I start cleaning the house, my once-a-year project of going through everything to see what I need to get rid of, that I realize how many years that really was. We have just moments, and we can spend them on things, or we can spend them on one another. We can invest them in profit, or we can spend them on growth. We can make a living with them, or we can make a life. Time is like a coin. We can spend it any way we want, but we can only spend it once. And when we do, it's gone forever. Here's an example for you from our years in Tampa. Marvin stood beside Jack's hospital bed for days, helplessly watching him grow weaker and weaker. During this time, he virtually lost his business, and it would take years to get back what they together had accomplished financially. But one day, the tides came and took Jack away. When Jack died, his family appeared and claimed the body, just took it away, leaving Marvin completely out of funeral arrangements. When he came to the church the next Sunday, I was talking with him outside, and I said, "Marvin, how are you doing? Really doing?" He said, "Better than I expected, Ruth." I asked him to explain, and he said, "Jack is gone now, and no one can ever, but I was there for him. He's gone now, but I was there for him, and no one can ever take that away from me. It is the one thing I have done with my life that I will never regret." Likewise, I was there for Karen at her last 10 times. And I certainly will never regret having been there for her. There's a tide in the affairs of humans. Don't miss it. I would like you now to think of the memory I asked you to decide on at the beginning of the sermon. What would you choose to tell the world how you would like to be remembered? Telling the world what you consider to be important. Now I want to ask all of us. Number one, is it still important? Number two, is it really how we want to be remembered? Number three, if it is, will it endure past our lifetimes? If it won't, then perhaps we'll have to start over. If it is worthy of us and our time, then are we fully investing ourselves in it? The only time we have will not be found in a bottle, found in our hearts. It is given by God, and the only moment we have for sure is this one, right now, and right here. So let's make it count. Amen.
Amen.